Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Red Sea podcast. Bit of a different episode this week, obviously, as you guys have probably all seen. Dennis is out right now. Luckily, he had a successful surgery yesterday. If you missed his update, there that is. He's at home recovering and he's doing well. Um, but I just wanted to say thank you to everybody. I know he's appreciative as well for all the kind messages and support that he's received over the past week or so. Obviously, tough time for him, but he's doing well, and hopefully we'll have him on the next episode. So, still wanted to get something out though. Obviously, we have a lot of things to talk about. Fortunately, not many of them are concrete, which makes things difficult being an Olympiacos fan. A lot of questions, especially around some big players, which we'll talk about here in a moment. But yeah, it's an interesting time of the season where it's awfully quiet. So I guess to just kind of get into that, the two biggest elephants in the room, obviously, are Kostas Fortounis and Ayub El-Kabi. It's June 27th, almost June 28th over in Greece. And these guys have 2 days left on their contracts, and we have no update yet as far as whether they'll be staying, whether they'll be going. News came out, obviously, early this week that Costa Fortuni had gotten a sizable offer from Saudi Arabia. That's kind of the big holdup for him. I think a lot of people anticipated that he would just stay because he's a captain. He's been with the club for 10 years now. But this kind of throws a wrench in it, obviously, considering the fact it's rumored to be $3 million a year for 3 years for a 31-year-old. I mean, that's life-changing money. I think most Olympiacos fans have the same sort of sentiment that I do. And that's, hey, if anybody deserves that kind of payout, it's Costa Fortuni, it's our captain. And, hopefully he stays. I think everybody wants that. But if he does leave, I mean, I don't have any complaints. I don't think anybody could have any complaints about what he's given to the club. He's not running away at a tough time. Obviously, he stuck with us through some of our worst ever seasons, stuck with us through two horrible knee injuries, stuck with us through managers having him out of favor, being dropped down to the B team, being stripped of his number, wearing number 53 for a season because Henri Onyekuru apparently was more deserving of the number 7. All of that, he stayed with us. He came back. He captained this team. He led this team. He was the heart and soul of this team. And if he does leave right now, he's leaving us European champions. So I think if anyone deserves to go and set himself up financially for life, it's him. But obviously, if we can get him to stay, nobody wants to see him leave. Personally, for me, I'm 24 right now, so for me, he's my favorite Olympiacos player ever because most of the time that I've really been into the sport and into the club, he's been our main player. And obviously, it helps that he's Greek as well, and he, red and white through and through. So it would be bittersweet, but again, I completely understand if he does decide to take that offer because that's ridiculous money, and that could set somebody up for life, could set his family up for the future. So we'll see what happens on that. Personally, same thing with El-Kabi. The fact that they have not renewed yet really makes me think that they're not going to, just because we're so close to their contracts being up. But we'll see. Apparently, Vagaris Marinakis is having a meeting with him. Maybe he already has had that meeting. Hasn't been a lot of concrete detail there. But from what I've heard, that's what his decision is going to come down to, is that conversation. So we'll see what happens. Hopefully he renews. But if he doesn't, I think that's same with El-Kabi. You shake his hand, you thank him for everything he's done for us, and you wish him the best. And maybe he'll come back someday, but we'll see what happens there. For El-Kabi, less to talk about there just because he's less entrenched in this club compared to Costa Fortuni. Haven't had any concrete details on where his offers are coming from. It seems like they are coming from Big Five leagues, which makes sense. That's probably why he hasn't made a decision yet, because he's at an interesting point in his career. He's 30 years old, just had his best ever season, burst under the scene in Europe. I wouldn't blame the guy for wanting to try to get a bigger move somewhere, because he probably won't be able to do that again. So this is really it for him. Haven't really heard anything about his case in about a week. So Again, not super optimistic considering that it's June 27th, June 28th, and we haven't heard anything. But again, who knows? Maybe we could see a last minute turnaround, and he does decide to come back, like we've just recently seen today with Yorgos Masuras. Originally, as he's been rumored for, seems like the past 2 or 3 seasons, seemed like he was going to have an offer with Bochum in Germany, but seems like that hasn't materialized. So, from the latest reporting, seems like he's going to stay and renew with Olympiacos, which again, Dennis and I talked about this a couple weeks ago. He's a guy that I think everyone would love to see stay. He's not going to be a starter for us, but to have him as a depth option, as a locker room guy, somebody who loves Olympiacos, he's Greek, he can be a leader on this team. I think that's absolutely a positive if we are able to retain him. But again, we'll wait for concrete details there before we really see that's done and dust. But from the reporting I'm hearing, he is going to stay. Some other departures or possible departures, obviously Vicente Iborra today announced he's not returning. The club put something out, he put something out. Seems like he's going back to Levante. No concrete details there though, but he said his goodbyes. Obviously he was integral to our European success, so I really hope that he just has the best down the road in his career. He leaves the club a legend, and it was great to have him part of this team, and he will definitely be missed. And another one that hasn't been confirmed, but there was some interesting photographs that came out last week. Andre Ocha seems like he's back with Braga. So Braga put on social media a post just showing a picture of some of the players reporting for preseason, and Andre Rocha was one of them. There have been a lot of rumors about him, as far as Olympiacos wanting to keep him, about there being a release clause in his loan, being pretty reasonable and pretty low. So the fact that he's back with Braga makes me maybe think that wasn't true. I wouldn't be surprised if it wasn't, because we've seen a lot of weird things reported and not reported as far as, Olympiacos contracts and loans and all that stuff. So it seems like he might not be returning. That would be a huge blow for us, because he was, again, another huge part of our European success. But at the moment, it seems like he's back in Portugal. So who knows what's going to happen there? Hasn't been announced officially yet, but that's where all the evidence points to. Another bit of news out of Portugal as far as a player we are looking to keep, and it seems like there's probably a good chance we will keep him, is David Carmo. So yesterday it came out, I saw, again, some conflicting reports. Some reports saying it was just 12 million. Some reports saying that we offered 12 million plus 3 million in bonuses or add-ons. But it seems like we put a pretty sizable offer out for him to FC Porto. And there's also news yesterday that they signed the Barcelona center back, Mikhail Faye, who is a left-footed center back, which would take Carmo's spot in the rotation, obviously. So it seems like everything points towards him coming back to Olympiacos, us buying him permanently. 12 million or 15 million, whatever that number is, that's a huge number for Olympiacos, but I think everyone can agree that's very justified. He was probably our best player outside of El Gabi and Fortunis in this European run. He was just, you can't say enough about him. His positioning is great. His IQ is great. Fantastic defender as far as, his distribution and his clearing. And he's 6'4", 6'5". You can't ever argue with that. So, that's really encouraging, especially considering that we haven't gotten great news about a number of these other guys. So hopefully getting Carmo back, and it seems like we will, that would be fantastic. Another interesting tidbit that I saw today, speaking of tall center backs, this isn't technically Olympiacos related, but it's a former Olympiacos player that looks like he will be signing for one of our rivals. Pape Abou Cisse is rumored to be joining AEK Athens, either on a free or a reduced transfer, because his team in Turkey is having financial difficulties and are looking to offload players. That would be kind of a tough one to see. I know he obviously wasn't ever one of the most talented players, but I think a lot of Olympiacos fans had a real soft spot for Pape Abou Cisse. I was one of those as well. He always played with a ton of passion. Obviously, he was a giant, a mountain of a man at the back, and he scored some actually really important goals for us, which is interesting to say for a center back. But yeah, it'd be great to have him back in Greece, but unfortunately not in the right shirt. So we'll see what happens there. That's just kind of an interesting thing that came up here in the past couple of hours that I figured I would touch on briefly. And then getting into some of our players that are our players. The first real signing of the summer is Marcos Stamenic from Nottingham Forest on loan. He played for Cervena Zvezda last season, a 22-year-old holding midfielder from New Zealand. I think this is a great loan pickup. Maybe there's some sort of clause built in there where we get him on the cheap permanently in the future if he pans out. But yeah, especially since we're losing Ibora, losing Horcha, we definitely will need those reinforcements in the midfield. I think he looks like he'd be a great partner for Santiago Heze, assuming that we do keep Santiago Heze, because that leads into my next point of the fact that there has apparently been some transfer activity around him, which I think we all expected after his fantastic season, both in Europe and in Greece. Even from the beginning of the year when we were a very bad team, he was one of the few bright spots. Apparently, Olympiacos have rejected, I don't know if it's one transfer offer or multiple, in the region of 15 to 18 million euro. And I think that's the right choice, obviously, considering the fact that we're losing a number of key players already, either through not being able to re-sign them or their loans expiring. He definitely is one we need to keep, especially being that he's a young player as well. I think he's going to be worth double that easily if he continues on the current trajectory. I think this summer, what I would want to see if we are selling him is better be an offer 30 million minimum. We'll see if that comes through or if we accept a lower offer. Obviously, it seems like there's a lot of big money flying around the Super League with Fotis Ioannidis. Panathinaikos rejecting some pretty high offers for him. 22.5 million euros is what I've seen. Personally, I think Santiago Heze is probably a more valuable player considering he's younger and has more of an upside. But that could be a sort of offer that moves things, thinking realistically. So hopefully we keep him. I'm glad to see that we rejected those preliminary offers because I do think he is worth significantly more than that. But that's definitely something to keep an eye on just because, again, we knew that he was going to be one of our players that we did have under contract who would be receiving significant attention. So that's an interesting thing to keep an eye on there. A couple of other rumors. So firstly, a player we haven't touched on yet is Daniel Podence. Obviously, he was on loan with Olympiacos. It had been kind of thrown around and rumored that there was or there wasn't a release clause in his loan. He was obviously very emotional in his last home game, so that almost makes it seem like maybe there wasn't, and there was a bit of uncertainty around whether he would return. There were reports in the past few weeks that there had been positive negotiations between Wolves and Olympiacos, but nothing really since. And then reports coming out today from Turkish media, so take this with just a massive grain of salt, is that Fenerbahce are inquiring about him. So no clue if that's concrete or not, but it's reports and they're out there, so that could be some competition we have for signing Daniel Podence. But honestly, I think he's one of the few that I'm actually pretty confident about. He seems like he stayed in Greece this summer. He was obviously pictured with the Ethniki a few weeks ago when they were traveling for the friendly with Germany. So hopefully that's positive signs there. But obviously, again, nothing concrete. So we'll see what happens there. There are those murmurs coming out today that there is transfer interest from Fenerbahce, so we'll see what happens or if that's even real. But again, with Turkish media, it's like Greek media. There's always these reports of interest. How many times have we heard that somebody wants Fortunis or Masuras, and that has never panned out. So we'll see. That's just an interesting thing to touch on. Another rumor that we had for coming in was the Brazilian center back Lianco. Came out today, reported by Fabrizio Romano, that he is not going to be joining Olympiacos. He'll be joining Atlético Mineiro in Brazil. So that one is one that we can scratch off. That was a pretty recent rumor anyways, so I don't think there was a lot of expectation there. But that has been reported. He is joining another team, so that's not one that we have to worry about anymore. But a few other rumors that came out today or have been out, and there's more details coming out on them. Dani Garcia, the Spanish midfielder from Athletic Bilbao, apparently he's close to signing. That's probably our close as the furthest we've gotten in negotiations with any player who's currently outstanding, according to the latest reporting in Greece. That again, with Ibora leaving, with it looks like Andre Rocha leaving, we definitely do need reinforcements in midfield. He's obviously probably going to fill that Ibora role, just because he's an older player. He's 34. He's probably not going to start every single game for us, especially with some of these younger midfielders we have now, with Stamenic, with Santiago Eze. But it's good depth, good leadership, good experience to have behind those guys. And he's a player that spent most of his career at the top flight in Spain. So obviously he will have more than enough skill for this Olympiacos team to contribute in a meaningful way. A couple other rumors. Apparently Olympiacos is pursuing Steve Mounier, the striker from Benin, a 29-year-old. He spent all of his career in Ligue 1 and the Premier League. Most recently, he's been with Stade Brest, I believe, or Stade Rennais, one of them. Apologies there for not having those teams straight. But he has had kind of an up and down goal scoring record throughout his career. Looking at his stats, he's never been a striker who's really scored a lot, which don't know how well that bodes for us. Obviously, he's a talented player considering the fact that he's been in some top leagues. But he 33 goals in his last 4 seasons, only 13 of those coming in the last 2. So he had 10 and 10 his first 2 years at Brest, and 13, 6 and 7 in the last 2. So it seems like he's definitely dropped off there. Apparently, we're pursuing him as a free agent because he is not going to be re-signing. Maybe there's a reason for that. You would think he should still be good enough for the Super League for that standard, and obviously Europa League next season as well. But I would say that's kind of an underwhelming rumor. But considering the fact that we might not have a striker at all, other than maybe El Arabi if he resigns and Charalabos Costulas, we need strikers. So I think he's better than nothing if we're not having success elsewhere. But I would not anticipate that he's going to be our number one target for striker, our number one starter in the new season. Hopefully he won't be, because I don't think that he has that sort of scoring pedigree that we would need. Lastly, the latest rumor that I've seen is Alexander Dragovic from Crvena Zvezda, another Crvena Zvezda player after Stamenic that we might be getting. He's a center back. He was rumored with us in the winter, so this isn't a particularly new rumor. But again, just to kind of fill out the depth there, I assume that we have guys like Ruben Vezo that are not going to be part of the plans next year, just because he wasn't very good for us. And then obviously not having Karamo, definitively signed, adding extra depth at center back is always going to be a good thing. That's another experienced player who's played in Europe, Austrian international, I believe, and he's played a decent amount for them too. So good experience. Obviously, he should be more than talented enough to slot in for us and provide cover where needed. But yeah, that pretty much wraps up the current case for Olympiacos as far as our transfers, our renewals. Like I said at the beginning, not a lot is concrete, which is kind of nervy at the moment. Obviously, we would like to have more to actually talk about in a concrete sense and more certainty surrounding our current players who have contract expiring or the loans. But that's kind of where we're at. So yeah, hopefully with the 30th being on Sunday, we'll have more news by then. You would think that we would probably have a decision from El Cabi and Fortunis by then. Maybe we won't. Maybe they'll be free agents for a few days and then decide either to sign with us or whoever else they're going to sign for. But it's a weird part of the summer where we're kind of just waiting, and especially with not having qualifiers for Europe this season, there might be less urgency from us there from a personnel perspective. Not needing to have guys ready for the third week of July or whatever it is. So that's kind of that. As far as just some other topics to touch on, I know I put the poll out last week or a couple days ago, seeing what you guys wanted us to talk about. Obviously, Olympiacos is the main focus. Additional touch points being the Ethniki for basketball and football. So the basketball team obviously has the Olympic qualifying tournament next week, playing at SEF. The group matches against the Dominican Republic and Egypt, which we would anticipate that Greece wins both of those matches. We should, considering the fact that we have a pretty much fully healthy squad. Giannis Antetokounmpo did not play in our most recent friendly, but he did play today against the Bahamas as the Ethniki won in pretty commanding fashion, which you would anticipate. But the Bahamas is a good team. There's a few NBA players scattered throughout there. So it's a good warm-up for us. Really, I think where that tournament's going to start for Olympiacos is going to be the knockout rounds, because the other group has Croatia and Slovenia in it. You would anticipate that Greece and Slovenia are going to win the groups, so that's going to be your, presumptive final. But Croatia as that semifinal could be a tricky task. Obviously, they're not the same team they've been in recent years where they were very competitive. Obviously, a bit less so now, but that could be a potential banana peel. Obviously, we really have to hope that we can put our best foot forward. Playing in Greece should be a huge benefit for us in that sense. And hopefully Giannis, he's always kind of struggled internationally with Greece, just because I think his play style is far more suited for the NBA than it is for Europe, which obviously makes sense, considering that he's spent the vast majority of his career there. Hopefully he can be more productive and more dominant like we know he can be in these games, especially considering the fact that Slovenia and Luka Doncic are coming up in the final. You would assume he's a kind of player that could play any style of basketball, and he could drop 40 or 50 points on us easily. So that's going to definitely require big stuff from Giannis and the rest of the team as well. But obviously you look to your stars to really lead you through tough times against good teams. So we'll see what happens there. I think final at a minimum, and then that match, which you would assume would be against Slovenia, will be very difficult. And we'll decide if we go to the Olympics. Obviously, it's been a while since the Greek basketball team has played at the Olympics, so that would be huge if we could qualify for that. But again, seems like we have the toughest qualifying bracket to get through to get there, so we'll see. And then as far as the football team, obviously news coming out that Ivan Jovanovic is the new manager. A lot of people are really optimistic about this. I don't think there's any reason not to be optimistic, but just me being the pessimistic Ethniki football fan that I am, I really can't get excited for it till I see it. Obviously, watching the Euros and seeing just the quality of all of the teams that qualified, that's one of the things that's really blown me away, is just how good European national teams have gotten. There really wasn't any teams that were just blown out of the water during the group stages. I mean, you saw teams like Croatia, which are, made it to 2 World Cup semifinals, made it to a Nations League final. They finished bottom of their group. They finished below Albania, and I think that was fully deserved. So that really tells you how kind of far we've fallen as a national team, and where we really need to up our standard to compete at these sorts of tournaments again in the future. And I don't have the most optimism or good faith that Ivan Jovanovic or this group of players are going to change anything. Hopefully they do, but it's going to be tough. Seeing Georgia yesterday go through in that group, as much as I know they deserved it, as much as they deserved to beat us, man, I was on a hate watch there. I'm going to be on a hate watch again on Sunday when they play Spain. It sucks to not see us at these tournaments, and looking forward to the World Cup. It's not going to get any easier. This Nations League campaign coming in for Greece is going to be hugely important. We need to finish second in that group. Obviously, we're grouped with England. They're going to win. I don't think that it's reasonable to expect Greece to top that group. But we should absolutely be finishing above Ireland and Finland. Those are two teams that we absolutely have to beat. And it's important that we finish second in that group for seeding in the World Cup draw. If we do finish second, that puts us in pot two. With the new format, there's going to be smaller groups. There's going to be more groups, which obviously benefits us in the sense that we can get into a higher pot than we probably would have otherwise, given the new format. So the new format being there's going to be 12 groups, 6 of which will have 5 teams, 6 of which will have 4 teams, and the top team qualifies. The second place team, all 12 go to the playoffs, along with the 4 best group winners from the Nations League that did not finish in the top 2 of the groups. So getting in pot 2 and not having to fight an uphill battle against 2 teams that are better than us is going to be huge. So I think, beating Ireland, beating Finland, that's a must. If we can compete with England, great. I don't think that's a possibility right now, but we'll see. England look very poor this year so far, so maybe they'll be in the midst of a coaching change. Maybe they won't take this competition as seriously as we saw in the last Nations League. They finished bottom of a group below Hungary, and they were pretty much destroyed every single game. So it'll be interesting. I think looking forward, we absolutely have to finish second in our Nations League group to get that second seed in the draw, and then hopefully we get lucky and we get a pot 1 team like Poland or Switzerland or maybe even Israel if they finish top 3 in their League A group, which I don't think they will, but anything's possible. And then that way maybe we can fight for first spot in a World Cup qualifying group. Otherwise, we should hopefully at least be a lock for the playoffs, which, again, it'll be the same format as it was for the Euros, and we saw how well that went. I'm not a fan of the one-leg single knockouts, but we will see. But just in general for the Ethniki, hopefully Jovanovic is a good change. Hopefully he will start calling up our best players, guys like Solis, guys like, hopefully Luvikas. Giacomakis is retired from the national team. I think that's a positive. So hopefully that paves the way for some of our younger, exciting players. Kouliarakis, all those guys that really didn't get the look in they deserved in the last selections when we had guys like Zavelas or, Mandalos or Pelkas in the midfield when they just didn't deserve to be there anymore at this current state. So we'll see. Hopefully it is a positive change, but I am just the eternal pessimist when it comes to the Ethniki. They don't give us a lot to look forward to, but that's kind of what we have going for us in this Nations League and what we really need to, hope to achieve if we're serious about qualifying for the World Cup in 2026. We'll see. So I think that's just about a wrap on everything that I kind of plan to discuss today. As always, please follow, like, share on all the social medias, YouTube, X, Instagram, all of that stuff. I'll continue to be running the accounts for the next few days while Dennis is still recovering, but he should be back very shortly. I know he's super excited to get back doing this again. He's still kind of helping me in the background with this because I'm trying to figure out StreamYard and all that stuff. But yeah, keep an eye out for all that. We should be back to normal here soon. And like I said at the beginning, thankfully Dennis is recovering well and had a good procedure. So thank you all for the continued support, and we will catch you next week.